This is a production of West Virginia Public Broadcasting.
Support for the Legislature Today is provided by West Virginia University, offering education, healthcare, and the opportunity to achieve career success since 1867. Information at wvu.edu.
Sonesta Suites in Charleston, an extended stay hotel located near the airport, downtown, and the state capitol. More at sonesta.com.
Solar Hauler, supporting Appalachian communities and building on West Virginia's history of powering the nation by bringing solar energy and battery backup to homeowners, nonprofits, and businesses throughout the region. More at solarhauler.com.
Welcome to the Legislature Today. I'm Curtis Tate. The Senate advanced many bills today, including a bill that would allow pharmacists to prescribe medicine. Brianna Heaney has more.
Senate Bill 526 has been in motion in the Senate for weeks. On March 13th, the bill was on second reading, a period when the bill can be amended and changed. After a long and contentious floor debate, the bill was parked in the Rules Committee. Today, the bill came out of the committee and was moved back to second reading with a proposed committee amendment. Senator Eric Tarr, a Republican from Putnam County, proposed the heavily debated and narrowly rejected amendment that he proposed on March 13th. Tarr says the latest Rules Committee amendment adds some guardrails to the bill.
The pharmacist in communication with the primary care physician or the primary care provider if they're prescribing. And then it limits how long they can do a recurring prescription to 30 days before they would have to go back to provider for those prescriptions as well.
Senator Laura Chapman, a Republican from Ohio County, is the sponsor of the bill and the chair of the Senate Health Committee. She opposed the amendment.
This puts an absolute large burden on the pharmacist and could give rise to a cause of action under 55-7-9. There's all sorts of complicated billing codes, CPT codes that are involved with dealing with any patient. So this could actually cause a bigger expense to the patient. And so for that reason, I urge rejection.
The amendment passed on a voice vote, and the bill was advanced in the Senate. The controversial camping ban bill, which was slated for second reading today, was parked in the House Rules Committee. The bill is a House bill, so it could sit there until the end of session without tripping any deadlines. With the deadline to move all bills out of the committees within their House of origin, the Senate reconvened at 4:30 to bring all Senate bills that pass committees to the floor. For West Virginia Public Broadcasting, I'm Brianna Heaney at the Capitol.
After a chaotic start to the week and the failure of a bill on its floor that would have allowed religious and philosophical exemptions to school entry vaccination, the West Virginia House of Delegates reconvened Tuesday morning but continued to struggle to complete its agenda. The body smoothly moved through introductions and resolutions until it was time to consider bills on third reading or final consideration and vote before asking the Senate to concur. At that point, the tone became contentious with a number of pointed personal comments, particularly around the topic of vaccines. A bill on exemptions that was expected to pass yesterday did not. Delegates requested that two bills be read in full, an action lawmakers usually take to delay a vote on a bill. In a discussion of separate bills that followed, lawmakers continued to act in a manner that prompted Speaker Roger Hanshaw to demand order on the House floor. The House also discussed legislation on student discipline, road safety, and eviction proceedings before adjourning at about 12:30 p.m. Yesterday, the governor signed House Bill 2354 that bans certain additives from schools starting in August of this year. It also bans those same additives from being sold statewide in 2028. Brianna Heaney has this story.
West Virginia is now the first state to have this expansive of a ban on food additives. The only other state with similar legislation is California. The new law has a number of implications for the state. It's estimated that by 2028, 60% of food currently on sale at grocery stores will be taken off the shelf. The legislation comes on the heels of the Make America Healthy Again wave, inspired by the U.S. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Senator Jason Barrett, a Republican from Berkeley County, said he is proud to see West Virginia leading the way on this legislation.
Yeah, really excited that Governor Morrissey signed our ban on food dyes in West Virginia. It's something we're extremely proud of. And really, I think West Virginia is going to be the first state of many states here in the near future to pass similar legislation to ban food dyes, not only in the school setting, but also statewide.
13 other states, from Oregon to Florida, have proposed similar legislation. Opponents of the legislation say it could make food more expensive and harder to get in the state. Since the law will have an impact on schools this year, some worry it could hurt schools' bottom line. The bill does not provide any extra money to pay for a change in food orders. Barrett, who is also the chair of the Senate Finance Committee, doesn't believe the bill will cost schools more.
I reached out to the superintendent of schools to find out if it would in fact cost money, because we assume that a lot of the products that don't have food dyes actually cost more. And that's really not the case. Really, these food dyes are put in foods to appeal to young children because they're bright, brilliant colors, and there's no health reason to put them in. There's no health benefit, certainly. And the superintendent indicated to me that she didn't expect any additional costs. So I think from a practical standpoint, it's the difference between Cheerios and Fruit Loops. Fruit Loops have synthetic dyes, Cheerios don't.
Many foods like puddings, juices, and dry snacks will have to either be reformulated or taken off the shelves completely. The bill was the 12th bill that the governor has signed so far. For West Virginia Public Broadcasting, I'm Brianna Heaney in Charleston.
Monday afternoon, the House Education Committee discussed a bill that would change the structure of the boards of governors at the state's 19 public colleges and universities. Delegate Clay Riley, a Republican from Harrison County, is a co-sponsor of House Bill 3279. He said the bill's primary aim is to expand the size of the boards of West Virginia University and West Virginia State University, the state's land-grant universities. The bill would also designate one member as a representative of the agricultural sciences.
So land-grant universities, as you know, were created by Congress to fulfill a three-part mission, which is teaching, research, and service. Agriculture is the bedrock component of our rural economy, and forestry has long been one of the pillars of West Virginia's economy, and it remains so today.
However, the bill also removes the voting rights of board members elected by the faculty, staff, and students of all universities and recategorizes those members as non-voting advisory members. Representatives from Marshall and West Virginia State University spoke against the action, citing the importance of shared governance in institutions of higher learning. Travis Mollahan, Associate Vice President of Government Relations at WVU, said it was critical the voices of faculty, staff, and students be heard when making decisions for the institution.
Shared governance is a standard in higher education, and so we believe that denying those four members the ability to vote and to have buy-in is counter to higher education principles.
A university board of governors is responsible for establishing policy and choosing a president. Several delegates argued that many other leadership structures do not allow members to choose leadership, with Riley likening it to employees not choosing their CEO. Tuesday, the House Education Committee voted 15-9 to advance the bill to the full House. The Senate Energy, Industry, and Mining Committee Monday re-voted on Senate Bill 505, which would affect how power plants operate in the state. First, the committee's chairman, Senator Chris Rose, a Monongalia County Republican, requested to recuse himself. Rose is an employee of Mon Power, which opposes the bill, and advised him to keep his role in the legislature separate from his job.
The chair recognizes the junior senator from the second.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As the only member here who works for one of the two electric utilities here in the state of West Virginia, as a electric utility worker in their transmission part of their industry, I'm asking for Senate Rule 43 to be excluded from the vote here today in the discussion.
Having heard the details of the junior senator from the second's employment, it is the ruling of the chair that the senator from the second be directed to vote, and he is greater than 5 members in a class, and will be directed to vote on all amendments and the bill's final passage.
All right, with that out of the way, now the chair recognizes the senator from Fayette.
I concur with that. I think you should vote on it because I think it's an important piece of legislation. It affects the industry, and I think you're the, in large part, the reason this bill is being run through this committee, so I definitely support that 100%.
Thank you, Senator. Any further discussion? Any amendments or motions? Hearing no amendments to questions is on agreeing to the committee substitute for Senate Bill 505. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The ayes do have it. Declare the motion adopted. The committee substitute is agreed to.
Senator Ben Queen, a Harrison County Republican, substituting for Rose as chairman, directed Rose to vote on all amendments and final passage of Senate Bill 505. We also heard from Senator Brian Helton, a Fayette County Republican, speaking in support of Rose voting on the bill. The state budget continues to work its way through the legislature. In recent weeks, we heard from Senator Jason Barrett, a Berkeley County Republican and chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, and Delegate Clay Riley, a Harrison County Republican and vice chairman of the House Finance Committee. Earlier today, Eric Douglas sat down with Sean O'Leary, senior policy analyst at the West Virginia Center on Budget and Policy, to discuss the state's budget from an analyst's perspective.
I'm here today with Sean O'Leary. He's the senior policy analyst for the West Virginia Center for Budget and Policy. Did I get that right?
Close.
All right. Let's start out, actually. Tell me about what the organization you work for is and what you do.
Yeah, the Center on Budget and Policy is a nonprofit, nonpartisan, independent tax and budget research organization. We research the budget, we research policy, and we believe that policy should benefit all West Virginians, lift us all up, and we care about the vulnerable populations like children, seniors, the disabled, and we want to make sure they're a part of the process as well.
And I know over the last number of years, your organization has written statements or made statements, concerns about tax cuts and the way money's being distributed within the state. You know, we have a new administration. The new administration walked in and said we're $400 million in the hole. So tell me what and I've had many lawmakers tell me that that's not actually true, that it's just the way you look at the budget. So that's why I wanted to talk to you today. So tell me the shape of the West Virginia budget right now, as you know it. I mean, obviously we don't have one for the next fiscal year yet.
I think we're lucky that it was only a $400 million budget gap. We've seen, the income tax cuts. Fiscal year 2026 projections is about $600 million below fiscal year 2023. So right there, you're in a big hole. The severance tax has collapsed. Energy prices are down, so that's down about $500 million from where we were 2 years ago. And then we have growth in the areas of the budget like the Hope Scholarship, up $100 million this year. You add all those together, you're looking at a significant budget gap. So I'm surprised that the budget gap's not larger than what the governor found.
Well, that's not cheery, but so let's kind of break down some of that. So, we did see 26 and a quarter, I think, total tax cuts over the last couple of years, personal income tax cuts. The projections, the income projections were lowered, and they've actually been pretty accurate from what I've seen. We've got, where we've had $800 million surpluses, now we've got like a $40 or $50 million surplus at this point. What does that do for us come July?
That just means that we're hitting those projections and that we're not going to have any surplus money like we had in the past years that we used to pay for Medicaid, that we used to pay for PEIA. That extra money is not going to be there at the end of the year to help pay for some of these shortfalls.
You mentioned severance taxes. That's the taxes we get from extracting oil and gas and coal, and so you said that's collapsed, and I've seen those numbers too, but let's talk about that a little bit. Why has that collapsed, first off?
Well, we saw a spike, and the spike happened because Russia invaded Ukraine. And that led to a spike in natural gas prices, and that was good for West Virginia's budget. We saw a huge increase in severance tax collections, and that led to a lot of our surpluses. And we used those surpluses to justify the income tax cuts. Well, the severance tax prices came back down like they always do. It's a boom and bust cycle. They go up, they go down. So we've seen them go down, and that's led to a big budget gap. So now we have major concerns about funding Medicaid, funding PEIA, all of those things that are vital for the state, because you really can't rely on the severance tax to stay high like it did in 2023.
Well, like you said, the boom and bust cycle isn't anything new. We've seen that for the last 150 years in West Virginia, or maybe not that long, but of ups and down cycles with the coal industry, the oil and gas industry. So I can't ask you to get in somebody else's mind, but what were they thinking when they based budget cuts based on short-term income?
Yeah, I mean, that's really fiscally irresponsible. You can't rely on one-time revenues to pay for permanent, ongoing either tax cuts or new spending, which we did both. We cut the income tax and we enacted the Hope Scholarship, so we did two of the cardinal sins of fiscal responsibility. But yeah, that's why we're in such a crunch this year, and why we're so worried at the Center on Budget and Policy, why we're so worried about Medicaid. You know, Medicaid gives health care to a third of the population. It's an economic driver in the state. It brings in billions of dollars from the federal government. And we're really concerned about that with this budget crunch.
So talk a little bit more about Medicaid. What shape is it in? How much does it cost? Let's talk the big picture of that.
Well, we get about $4 billion from the federal government to pay for Medicaid, and we pay about $1 billion ourselves. So we draw down $4 for every dollar that we put in.
So globally for West Virginia, it's about a $5 billion program.
Right, yeah, okay. And it's a net positive in the budget because we're bringing down so many federal dollars. So we're concerned both at what's happening at the federal level with potential cuts to Medicaid, and what's going to happen at the state level if we can't find that money in the budget. That would be devastating for the health of the people of West Virginia. That would be devastating for the economy. This is how we keep rural hospitals open. This is how we keep health insurance coverage for a third of the state. 25% of children are covered by Medicaid in the state. So we're really concerned about Medicaid, both at the federal level and at the state level.
And that's, generally speaking, older West Virginians and children or people with disabilities. That's not the healthy kind of middle. That's the people who have challenges anyway.
Well, with the expansion population, it's low-income people, healthy or unhealthy. So we've seen, before you were right, before we expanded Medicaid under Governor Tomlin, it was largely children, the ill, the disabled. But now we have a bigger population. So we're talking, 1 in 3 people in West Virginia. But yeah, still a lot of disabled, still a lot of poor health, still a lot of children that rely on that program for their health care.
I guess I was just thinking those are people who don't have a lot of other options.
Yeah, exactly.
Should the program go away? So, I mean, are we facing that? Do you think are there potential cuts to Medicaid coming?
Delegate Chris spoke that he was very concerned about Medicaid, the growth in that program. The governor's projections don't show that much growth in the out years of Medicaid. It actually shows it going down a little bit. But we're relying on one-time money this year in the governor's budget to fund Medicaid. And that, again, one-time money, permanent ongoing program, that's going to lead to problems down the road. So we're concerned, maybe not so much this year, but next year and the year after, what's going to happen with Medicaid.
And then there's still the mystery of what's going on at the federal government.
Exactly, and then there's major talks of cuts to Medicaid at the federal level that could shove a lot of the costs down onto the state, or we could have to cut back on services or cut back on coverage, and none of those options are good for West Virginia.
Right. You mentioned the Hope Scholarship Program. Projections for the next fiscal year, or I'm sorry, I don't remember if it's this fiscal year or next fiscal year, that it costs about $100 million.
$100 million this fiscal year, $300 million next fiscal year.
That's right. Okay. So I early on in the session, during the legislative session, I had an interview with some people who were talking about changes to the way people qualify for Hope Scholarship. What do they have to do to fix Hope Scholarship? And maybe that's too broad of a question for you, but
we have the Promise Scholarship. The Promise Scholarship is capped at a certain dollar amount. We could do something like that. We could enact, income testing so that it's all going to low-income families and not families who are wealthy already sending their kids to public schools. But the fact of the matter is that, we're spending so much on the Hope Scholarship, neglecting a lot of the needs in our public schools. For what we're spending on the Hope Scholarship, we could give teachers a pay raise, we could put new school counselors in every school, new school nurses, new school psychologists, all of these things for what we're spending just this year on the Hope Scholarship, let alone next year when the cost triples.
Have you seen anything move so far that adjust that or address that?
I have not, no.
I didn't think so either. One of the problems facing West Virginia, one of the many problems, is the rural nature of many of our communities. Whether it's hospitals, schools, there's only so much consolidation we can do in some of these counties, or the kids are going to be on the bus for an hour and a half, and that doesn't work. Any big picture thoughts on how to address that?
There's been talks about revamping the school aid formula. I've not seen any of those options. But one option is sending more money to the rural counties, sending more money to high poverty areas, so that those students are getting the same opportunities, that those students are not stuck on the bus forever. So we're not closing schools, and we have the money, but we're using it for tax cuts and the Hope Scholarship. So, revisiting our priorities and making sure public education is one of those would help address that issue.
So, moving forward, how do you see the state, what does the state need to do to right the ship in your mind?
I think we're going to have to really make tough decisions about revenue. Have these income tax cuts lived up to their promise? Well, we said that they're going to cost the state a whole lot of money and not do a whole lot of good. That's what we're seeing right now. And then again, taking a look at what we're prioritizing when it comes to education. Are we going to prioritize public schools or private schools? And right now we're prioritizing private schools over public schools, and that's not going to help the majority of students in West Virginia.
We just got a couple minutes left. Pie in the sky. What do you want West Virginia to do?
I would like to see us reform our income tax in a way that gives the majority of West Virginians a tax cut, but also brings in revenue. You can do that by reforming the tax brackets, adding new ones for high income earners, and that brings in a bunch of revenue. You do that, you've got a bunch of revenue to do things like shoring up Medicaid, like solving PEIA, like giving teachers a pay raise, like filling the schools with counselors and school psychologists and school nurses. All of that is possible. And all of it can be done by actually giving the majority of West Virginians a tax cut compared on top of what they've already received so far.
So you're not actually advocating for undoing the tax cut that's been done, just hitting the higher earners?
Exactly, yeah. If we hit those higher income, reform the brackets, take a look at some of our tax preferences and tax credits that don't seem to be doing a whole lot of good, we can bring that money in and we can do a whole lot of good with it.
Anything else you want to add? Or?
I think I'm good.
All right. Thank you, sir. I appreciate you coming in.
Thanks for having me.
That was Sean O'Leary from the West Virginia Center on Budget and Policy discussing the state's budget with Eric Douglas. That's it for tonight. Thank you for joining us. We're getting down to the wire for this legislative session. Today was day 42 out of 60. The next hurdle is all bills have to be out of their committees in their House of Origin to allow for 3 full days of readings. The bodies can suspend those rules, but that takes more votes. After that, April 2nd is crossover day. That is the day bills have to be out of their chamber of origin to give the opposite body time to consider them. Right now, both chambers are meeting twice a day to move bills forward, and they will likely meet on Saturday as well. Catch the Legislature Today Monday through Friday at 6 p.m. And remember, West Virginia Public Broadcasting covers the session daily in our radio news program West Virginia Morning and on our news site wvpublic.org. We also broadcast the daily floor sessions of both the House and the Senate on the West Virginia channel. I'm Curtis Tate. We'll see you here again tomorrow.
Support for the Legislature Today is provided by West Virginia University, offering education, healthcare, and the opportunity to achieve career success since 1867. Information at wvu.edu.
Sonesta Suites in Charleston, an extended stay hotel located near the airport, downtown, and the state capitol. More at sonesta.com.
Solar Hauler, supporting Appalachian communities and building on West Virginia's history of powering the nation by bringing solar energy and battery backup to homeowners, nonprofits, and businesses throughout the region. More at solarhauler.com.